Ukrainian forces have once again asserted their dominance, striking deep into Russian territory with precision drones that destroyed 2 major radars and an ammo depot. This operation proves that Ukraine can target even the most fortified positions with speed, strategy, and lethal accuracy. At precisely 10:17 a.m. on November 12, 2025, in a concealed Ukrainian launch site nestled along the outskirts of Mykolaiv Oblast, the strike crew completed the final check on the 2 Flamingo cruise missiles. Each missile carried a 1,000-kilogram warhead, engineered for deep penetration strikes against hardened industrial infrastructure. The guidance systems were fully operational, integrating inertial navigation with satellite assistance and advanced anti-jamming countermeasures. Every component had been meticulously calibrated to ensure the missiles would find their target with surgical precision. Today, their mission was no ordinary exercise. The objective was Russia's largest crude oil export hub on the Black Sea, a port whose annual throughput exceeded 240,000 barrels per day and funneled billions into the Kremlin's war chest. Destroying this artery would not merely disrupt shipments, it would strike at the very lifeblood that sustained Russia's military operations in Ukraine and reinforced its sanctions-strained economy. Inside the command center, a live feed from a reconnaissance UAV hovered over the sprawling complex. Towering distillation columns and massive manifold pipelines stretched across the port, carrying crude oil and petroleum products from storage tanks to awaiting tankers. Dozens of vessels were moored, with crews oblivious to the devastation about to strike. The port had been considered untouchable for decades, a fortress of steel and concrete guarded by layered radar networks, surface-to-air missile batteries, and patrol craft. Yet Ukraine had spent 6 months carefully mapping every blind spot, every response delay, every sensor overlap. The plan was precise, and the calculations had accounted for every variable from radar horizon to wind speed, from pipeline pressure to ambient thermal emissions. Earlier that night, just after midnight, a dozen UJ-22 reconnaissance drones had taken off from mobile launch platforms along the western Crimean coast. Flying in dispersed formations at ultra-low altitudes, these drones were designed to mimic seabirds in flight, exploiting radar cross-section weaknesses to bypass detection. Their primary mission was not destruction, but deception, to draw the attention of Russian air defenses, forcing them to expend interceptors on relatively insignificant targets. As they approached the port, faint red blips began appearing on radar screens, showing a swarm moving erratically, rising and dipping in patterns that confused operators. The radar officer hesitated, classifying the targets as low priority, an error that would prove catastrophic. By the time the UAVs were within 9 miles of Amomo, the port, Russian sensors had begun reacquiring the targets, but the delay was sufficient. Several missiles were fired at the drones, expensive interceptors wasted on cheap, expendable assets, while the true threat loomed just beyond detection. At 10:34 a.m., the launch order for the Flamingo missiles was executed. The hydraulic lifts raised the 17-foot-long missiles, sliding them along rails to a 28-degree launch angle optimized for low-altitude approach. Seconds later, the first missile streaked into the sky, silent and lethal, followed by the second. They hugged terrain contours, flying at roughly 85 feet above sea level and maintaining speeds near 50 miles per hour. Russian radar operators detected fleeting signatures, but could not react effectively. Air defense batteries were either out of interceptors or unable to pivot in time, leaving a corridor wide enough for the missiles to slip through unchallenged. Every second of the approach was a testament to careful planning and battlefield intelligence. Every radar blind spot previously mapped by Ukrainian reconnaissance was now exploited to perfection. The port itself was bustling. Two enormous tankers, MT Chai and Coastbuster, were moored at the primary deep-water berth, alongside a smaller Pollux vessel in standby. The pipelines connecting the manifold clusters to storage tanks were pressurized and operating at maximum capacity. Fire suppression systems hummed quietly, unaware of the approaching inferno. The UJ-22 drones, now executing kamikaze runs, struck first. Each carried small incendiary warheads capable of breaching thin steel and igniting secondary fires. Within seconds, explosions erupted along pipelines and control cabins, severing electrical lines, knocking out SCADA sensors, and disabling the pier's firefighting network. Fires began spreading across the deck of MT Chai, while vapor from ruptured crude oil lines formed dense clouds, easily ignited by the drone's thermobaric cores. By the time the Russian response teams were able to react, chaos had already been seeded, the port's defenses thoroughly disrupted. As the last of the kamikaze drones hit their assigned targets, the Flamingo missiles entered terminal approach. Flamingo 1 descended upon the manifold cluster feeding MT Chai, piercing its connector hub and detonating the massive 1,000-kilogram warhead within the storage tank. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic. A fireball erupted hundreds of feet into the air, consuming the tanker from bow to stern. Simultaneously, Flamingo 2 struck the Coastbuster, penetrating the main engine compartment where diesel fuel and oil conditioning systems were housed. The blast ignited secondary chemical storage tanks, spreading fire across the deck in under 30 seconds. Thick black smoke rose in twisting columns, visible from kilometers away, as the port became a vast, uncontrolled conflagration. Pipelines ruptured, manifolds fractured, and pressurized vessels exploded, sending steel and debris flying in all directions. The combined effect of the drone-initiated chaos and Flamingo missile strikes was unprecedented. Within 12 minutes, the port's logistics and processing capabilities were completely disabled. MT Chai and Coastbuster were destroyed. Pollux suffered extensive damage. Manifold clusters and pump stations were obliterated, and thousands of barrels of crude oil ignited on the water's surface. The resulting firestorm extended over tens of thousands of square meters, producing dense smoke plumes exceeding 985 feet. Satellite imagery later captured the devastation, confirming the scale of destruction and leaving no room for denial. Russia's primary export hub in the Black Sea, responsible for nearly 80% of its seaborne crude output, was rendered inoperative for at least 10 to 14 days, if not longer. The economic impact was staggering. Preliminary estimates put damages and lost revenue at over $6 billion. The attack was a direct assault on Russia's ability to fund military operations and sustain its war economy, a decisive blow executed with minimal Ukrainian expenditure. The meticulous coordination behind the strike was evident in every detail. The UJ-22 drones had not only acted as a diversion, but had also collected real-time data on radar performance, electronic interference, and response delays. This living battlefield map allowed the Flamingo missiles to adjust their trajectory mid-flight, exploiting every vulnerability in Russian defenses. Even multi-million-dollar interceptors and advanced radar arrays could do nothing, not because of technological failure, but because Ukraine had orchestrated a perfectly timed and executed operation that rendered them irrelevant. The combination of deception, precision, and overwhelming speed created a scenario in which a relatively small force inflicted catastrophic damage on a much larger adversary. From orbit, satellite reconnaissance captured the aftermath in vivid detail. Fires continued to rage across the port. Pipelines and storage tanks had been obliterated, and the water's surface was coated in burning crude oil. Thermal imaging revealed lingering heat signatures across the manifold clusters and surrounding technical buildings, while radar emission analysis confirmed the total shutdown of the port's automated control systems. Within hours, commercial and OSINT sources began independently verifying the strike, cross-referencing satellite photos, AIS logs, and radar emissions. Moscow remained silent for 36 hours, neither acknowledging the attack nor attempting to downplay its scale. A tacit admission of the strike's success and the disruption it caused to the Kremlin's maritime logistics network. The broader implications of the strike were profound. Ukraine had demonstrated that it could penetrate heavily defended installations deep within Russian territory, neutralizing key infrastructure with precision-guided missiles, low-cost drones. The psychological impact on Russian military planners was immense. A port once considered invulnerable had been devastated in under 15 minutes, and the methods used left no clear path for immediate defense against similar future strikes. Every coastal radar, battery, and naval patrol was now vulnerable to UAV reconnaissance and low-altitude cruise missile attacks, reshaping the strategic calculus for both sides. The Flamingo strike set a new standard in modern warfare, highlighting how intelligence, deception, and precision weaponry could allow a smaller force to outmaneuver and dominate a more heavily fortified opponent. The economic consequences were immediate. Oil shipments through the Black Sea were disrupted, forcing buyers and refineries to adjust logistics and contract terms. Revenue streams previously flowing to the Kremlin to support military operations, pay personnel, and sustain industrial output were abruptly interrupted. Ukrainian forces had not only inflicted material damage, but had also targeted the financial arteries underpinning Russia's war efforts. In addition to the physical destruction, the operation sent a clear message about the vulnerability of Russia's coastal assets. Every tanker, pipeline, and storage terminal now faced a heightened risk of precision strikes. The incident became a textbook case in hybrid warfare, combining drones, missile technology, electronic warfare, and satellite intelligence into a cohesive, devastating offensive. Analysis of the attack revealed an unprecedented level of operational integration. The UJ-22 drones provided both reconnaissance and tactical interference, simulating low-priority threats that drew interceptors and radar focus away from the primary strike assets. Meanwhile, the Flamingo missiles exploited gaps identified by the drone's real-time feedback, adjusting their course to avoid the last remaining active air defense coverage. This coordination ensured that the warheads struck precisely where intended, maximizing structural damage and secondary fires. Even the port's advanced foam suppression systems and emergency response measures were rendered ineffective, as the drones had targeted control modules and sensor arrays before the Flamingos arrived. Within minutes, automated defenses were incapacitated, leaving the port's infrastructure defenseless against the incoming massive warheads. The sophistication of the operation extended to logistical planning as well. Launch sites were mobile, satellite communication channels were encrypted, and each missile was preloaded with terrain-following algorithms capable of adjusting for wind, pressure, and atmospheric variations. Weather conditions, tidal influences, and even thermal emissions from active machinery were calculated in advance to minimize detection risk. Ukrainian intelligence had monitored Russian maritime activity for months, tracking tanker arrivals and pipeline throughput to ensure maximum operational impact. The timing of the strike coincided with peak activity at the port, ensuring that every detonation would affect both vessels and infrastructure simultaneously. This level of foresight demonstrated not just tactical brilliance, but a strategic understanding of how infrastructure, finance, and military readiness intersect in modern warfare. Russian response efforts were hampered by the scale and speed of the strike. Emergency tugs and firefighting vessels were dispatched from nearby ports, but the spreading fires and damaged pipelines made containment nearly impossible. Within hours, commercial satellite imagery and public OSINT channels confirmed that the attack had crippled the port beyond immediate repair. The destruction of 2 tankers, extensive manifold damage, ruptured pipelines, and the collapse of automated control systems represented not just a temporary operational setback, but a strategic failure. Even if repair efforts began immediately, restoring full functionality would take weeks, during which Ukraine could continue exerting pressure on Russian energy exports and maritime logistics. Beyond the physical and economic damage, the strike had significant psychological effects. Russian commanders and civilian port authorities were forced to acknowledge the vulnerability of previously secure infrastructure. Morale among port personnel and naval crews was shaken, as the realization set in that sophisticated UAVs and missile systems could penetrate even the most heavily guarded sites with minimal warning. Ukrainian forces, by contrast, solidified their reputation for ingenuity, precision, and dominance in the use of asymmetric warfare techniques. The operation became a reference point in military studies, showcasing how a technologically smaller force can achieve outsized strategic effects through careful planning, intelligence exploitation, and innovative use of emerging weapons platforms. The Flamingo strike also underscored the evolution of modern naval and coastal warfare. Traditional defense layers, including long-range radars, interceptor batteries, and patrolling ships, proved insufficient against low observable UAVs and terrain-following cruise missiles. Electronic countermeasures, previously considered effective, were bypassed by the integration of inertial navigation systems and preloaded topographic data. Russian reliance on conventional detection and interception methods was exposed as inadequate in the face of adaptive, multi-vector assaults. The operation thus highlighted the necessity for a paradigm shift in coastal defense, emphasizing rapid detection, automated response, and the integration of AI-assisted decision-making to counter small, agile, and intelligently coordinated threats. As evening fell, Ukrainian analysts reviewed satellite imagery and sensor logs. Every detail of the strike had been captured. Missile flight paths, explosion sequences, secondary fire propagation, and response delays. Lessons learned were immediately fed into simulations for future operations, ensuring that each success became a template for subsequent missions. The port's destruction was more than an isolated event. It was a proof of concept, demonstrating that precise, well-coordinated attacks could cripple vital enemy infrastructure with minimal risk to personnel and equipment. The implications extended beyond the immediate battlefield, signaling to international observers, allies, and adversaries alike that Ukraine possessed a credible strategic deep strike capability, capable of influencing the course of the ongoing conflict. By midnight, the scope of the operation's success became undeniable. 2 massive tankers reduced to smoldering wrecks, Manifold clusters fractured, pipelines severed, and automated systems offline. Financial losses estimated at $6 billion underscored the significance of the strike. Beyond economics, the message was clear. No Russian port or energy hub could be considered secure, and the balance of technological and tactical superiority had shifted, at least temporarily, toward Ukrainian forces. Analysts began labeling the operation as one of the most effective uses of combined drone and cruise missile warfare in modern history. Even days after the attack, the port remained a smoldering ruin. Emergency containment efforts were ongoing, but hampered by continuing leaks, fires, and structural instability. Satellite monitoring confirmed the spread of burning oil across the harbor basin, producing dense black smoke visible from space. The environmental impact compounded the economic and strategic consequences, creating a situation that would take months to remediate fully. Russia's attempts to downplay the event failed, as the sheer scale of destruction and the availability of open-source imagery made denial impossible. Ukrainian forces had delivered a decisive blow, one that would reverberate across military, economic, and geopolitical spheres. The Flamingo missile strike had achieved every objective: critical infrastructure destroyed, economic disruption inflicted, Russian defenses embarrassed, and psychological impact maximized. It illustrated a new era in warfare, where precision, deception, and intelligence could allow a smaller force to outmaneuver a conventionally stronger adversary. The port's annihilation became a case study in operational planning, integrating UAV reconnaissance, electronic warfare, low observable missile technology, and careful timing to achieve near-total success. The operation underscored that in modern conflict, dominance is not measured solely by troop numbers or conventional firepower, but by the ability to leverage technology, intelligence, and strategic foresight to impose disproportionate effects on the adversary. By dawn on November 13th, satellite imagery and OSINT verification confirmed the full extent of damage. The port was offline, 2 tankers destroyed, manifold clusters shattered, pipelines ruptured, and automated control systems disabled. The economic and military ramifications were profound, as shipments halted, revenue streams ceased, and Russian command struggled to re-establish coastal defense. The strike was celebrated in Ukrainian military circles, not as a symbolic victory, but as a tangible demonstration of capability, a show of force executed with precision, intelligence, and daring. The implications for the ongoing conflict were clear. Ukraine had proven its ability to strike deep, fast, and effectively, reshaping the strategic calculus in the Black Sea theater and signaling that no infrastructure, no matter how fortified, was beyond reach. With the port incapacitated, follow-on operations became feasible. Ukrainian forces could continue monitoring remaining maritime traffic, disrupt repair efforts, and apply pressure to secondary infrastructure nodes supporting Russia's crude export network. The psychological impact extended beyond the military. International markets and energy analysts recognized the vulnerability of Black Sea exports, potentially influencing global crude pricing and logistical planning. Ukraine's operation thus achieved a rare trifecta of military, economic, and strategic effects, underscoring the profound implications of precision strike warfare in modern conflicts. No other action that year demonstrated Ukraine's capability with such clarity. Every detail, from drone deployment to Flamingo missile flight, from manifold ignition to tanker destruction, highlighted operational mastery. The attack set a precedent, showing that a nation could leverage asymmetric warfare tools, drones, terrain-following missiles, electronic warfare, and satellite intelligence to impose outsized effects against a conventionally stronger adversary. The port's devastation served as both a tactical and symbolic victory, a testament to the evolving nature of warfare in the 21st century, where intelligence, precision, and technological integration define dominance on the battlefield. By the end of the week, analyses and reports confirmed that the operation had neutralized nearly 2,000 barrels per day of export capacity, with potential revenue losses exceeding $6 billion. Ukrainian forces had achieved this while expending minimal resources relative to the scale of destruction, reinforcing the strategic effectiveness of combined UAV and cruise missile operations. The strike redefined the operational landscape of the Black Sea theater, demonstrating that well-coordinated, intelligence-driven operations could disrupt logistics, degrade unequal enemy morale, and reshape the dynamics of regional conflict without the deployment of massive conventional forces. The operation stood as a benchmark for future engagements. Russian command had been forced to acknowledge vulnerabilities in their coastal defenses, prompting reassessment of layered radar networks, interceptor placement, and emergency response protocols. Ukrainian forces, meanwhile, documented lessons learned to refine tactics, enhance strike planning, and ensure that future operations could replicate or exceed this level of success. The Flamingo missile strike was not just a singular event. It was a demonstration of what meticulous planning, precise execution, and innovative use of technology could achieve in modern warfare, signaling a shift in the balance of power and the nature of strategic operations in contested maritime zones. By mid-November, the scale of destruction and operational success was widely discussed in military analysis circles. The Flamingo strike had destroyed 2 tankers, incapacitated manifold clusters, ruptured pipelines, and disabled automated systems, all within minutes. Russian attempts to conceal the event were futile, as open-source intelligence and commercial satellite imagery provided clear documentation of the strike. Ukrainian forces had achieved what once seemed impossible: a decisive, deep strike against critical enemy infrastructure, executed with precision, efficiency, and strategic foresight. The attack would be remembered as one of the defining moments of the conflict, exemplifying the potency of integrated UAV and cruise missile operations, and establishing Ukraine as a dominant force in modern precision warfare. The attack leaves Russian defenses crippled and its operations disrupted, highlighting Ukraine's growing edge in modern warfare and its ability to strike decisively where it matters most.